Welcome to Living on the Ocean. My name is Arie and together with Cheryl Hudson, we're working on Trimaran Dawn. We extended her stern on the sandbank because she wasn't sailing the way she should be. And we did this with a wooden shape, and in this wooden shape we built another wooden shape that we could take out and put it on the front deck. And over this shape we made the extension from foam and epoxy. And when we finally put it behind Trimaran Dawn and see the new stern, the new lines and curves, we were very happy with it. A lot more work needed to be done. Carbon fiber chain plates, carbon fiber rudder connections and hinges, making the rudder and the rudder housing and the tiller, the steps, the aft deck, the tow rail, endless fairing and painting. And especially working in tents because of the weather conditions wasn't always fun. So you can understand how excited we were when we finally could move Trimaran Dawn again not long ago.
Hey darling, it's working.
But we could not sail yet. More work had to be done and we had to go back to the sandbank where the rudder blade could now fold up. And on the sandbank I climbed the mast and started making the first new Dyneema stays. We also got the sails back out. They needed some air and it was so exciting to see them back up. So wanting to go sailing when you see that. And we were very close. There were just some last jobs to be done, like the shapes to let the water go out of the new extension, which is now a very big space on the inside. After in the last episode we removed all the old bits of the transom and took the necessary Kevlar away. And a lot of that work had to be done inside because of the bad weather. But now the tides are correct again and the weather is better, I can continue the work on the outside. And that's necessary because my beard got so long because I promised not to shave before we could sail again. And being motivated by all this, I started to drill holes in the outside of the boat. You can remember the little holes I drilled a couple episodes ago, and I put bits of duct tape on top of them to know exactly where I had to drill my holes. And taking away the outside, there's the blue foam in exactly the right place. This blue drain hole shape which we made a couple episodes ago. Well, it was sacrificial and with a screwdriver I removed it all, the pieces falling into our square buckets and nicely collected and trashed the proper way. Now using a multi-tool to cut exactly up to what's still there, because around that foam shape I put glass fiber and that leaves a perfect curved shape now on the inside. And now we have to make the outside nicely lined out with this inside shape. Using a multi-tool is great for that because little by little I can cut away. There's only glass fiber on the inside, so if I cut too much I will have a real hole in the boat. And that all may look reasonable easy sitting there in a square bucket, knowing that the tide is actually still going down at the moment, so very soon it's just only sand underneath me. But I have to get this hole perfectly sanded, plastered, glass fibered and plastered again as good as possible, because I also want to get it painted, but that's obviously not gonna work all in one day. I must get glass fiber on this so that this beautiful shape that I'm now making, in which I put so much time and effort, will not get contaminated with salt water for me the next day or maybe even later to continue the job. And I also cannot just cut the corners and do only a partly good job. It has to be done well and proper. All the voids need to be filled with filler before I can put the glass fiber on top of this. And if you get one side done, then there's obviously the other side. It's just a matter of keep on going. It has nothing to do with liking it. Many people make that mistake. So, oh, I like to build boats. No, I like to create things. That's fun. But the work is often much too much. And the way to do it is simply keep on thinking about how it's gonna be when it's done. And doing that sometimes year in, year out. My first boat took me 15 years to build. I sailed in between because I cannot do that all in one go behind each other. And the same with this one. We will work on this boat, sail with this boat, work on this boat and sail with this boat. And she will become a beautiful boat, but it will be endless work, often. But lucky enough, the experience is making my brush almost going automatically in the right places, and I can put one piece of glass on there after another, move from one side to the boat to the other side of the boat, and my brain is where this music is. We are thinking about the Caribbean, about the ocean, about sailing again, when we just get these layers of glass on the boat. It's the last bit of the job, and you can hear it. I will say it over and over in this video because we have been struggling to continue, of course, and only this is giving us motivation. Let's get sailing. If you know what to do, it can look so easy, and the work itself I don't think is specifically difficult. The planning, knowing what you can do in a day, what needs to be done, the times it takes, and plan it so you alone, or even more complicated, with others, can make the job done in the time that you have. And in a workshop you can lay your tools down and continue the next day, or work later that evening. But you can see the colors change already. It's end of the afternoon. The sun is starting to set, and soon there will be condensation. Now I know this is on the underneath side. If this was me on the horizontal side of the boat on the top, that would be already too late. And I'm really on the end of what I can do in one day. And that makes the planning of this kind of jobs, I think, the most important part. Well, the next morning, Cheryl takes all the rubbish that we collected from the old transom and other bits of the boat and normal rubbish to the trash containers with a canoe. And when she's disappearing in the distance with great speed, I'm preparing all the things that I need today for a very big sanding job. The water isn't all the way down yet. Like yesterday, every day is about an hour later, so the water will be higher, or it will be dry an hour later today than yesterday. So I need this square box that I use to work in, and I need to tie it very well up to the boat so that when I start sanding, I'm not pushing myself away from the boat when I apply pressure to the tool that I'm using. So I'm getting all the things into the square box: the generator, the vacuum cleaner, the scrapers, the sandpaper and my tool, and start the generator. Now I can work. And this all takes a lot more time than when you would be working in a workshop. Setting it all up every morning and taking it all down every evening or in the end of a job takes sometimes really more time than the job itself that I have to do. And that's sometimes very discouraging when you feel already tired to start. But now I'm excited. I know I'm almost there. The work from yesterday went well and it hasn't been too cold. The epoxy is hard enough, far enough cured to be sanded. It doesn't stick to my sandpaper anymore. I can often feel a good difference between epoxy that's been on the vertical surfaces and on the horizontal surfaces. On the horizontal surfaces on the top, it's been much colder and the epoxy is often still soft. But this day it all went very well. I sanded everything, the holes and the grey paint, and vacuum cleaned it and plastered it later in the afternoon again. And that was another day fit to schedule. The next morning I'm already sanding. When the tide is still much higher, as you can see, compared with yesterday, there's no way you could walk. But I want to get this all done, because I also want to sand on the side of the hull when the tide starts to go down. The two hull fittings that we closed and the exhaust hole that we closed. We want to paint all of this, and we're not yet sure which color we're gonna paint it. We're actually thinking to start painting it white so we can start to prepare for the final color of this boat. It's not as deep as it looks like. I'm sitting on my knees, cleaning the sides that we're gonna paint with fresh water to get all the salt and remnants of dust off very well. One thing you can see very well here is all the squares of the glass fiber that we put on the old through hole fittings and the exhaust hole. I'm excited to paint it and that very soon we will see nothing of it anymore. After cleaning it all, now it needs to dry, and in that time I can stick paper tape and you can see very nice the line that's gonna come into this boat. And if we paint this in 2 different colors it will be so nice, and I'm standing there imagining it, how it's gonna be like. I'm very happy with the result and I can't wait for the water to be all the way down far enough for me also to stick paper tape on the waterline, which is basically a trick of sticking it in a long straight line and then slowly bring it to the boat so it stays nice and straight and doesn't show these little bumps that you sometimes see on a bad waterline. And then it's finally painting time. An exciting job to do. You finally can see the result of all your work, but I can't see it very well. It all looks a bit fuzzy, and that's actually quite obvious. It's not a paint, it's the fact that in the excitement I forgot to put on my glasses. So that's a lot better. Now I can see what I'm doing, and also the hole that we made, the shape, it looks very nice. I so enjoy doing this, finishing off all the work that you did with a nice layer of paint. And I also have a nice workbench on the beach, the Ama from a Trimaran. It always makes a great place for barbecues and jobs. And working away all those squares from the exhaust and the through hole fittings, nothing to see of it anymore. The job on one side is almost done. And no, I'm not colorblind. We were gonna paint it white, but on the last moment we decided that the boat would just look much better for the coming time if it was all grey, because painting the rest will still be quite far away. It's fun to paint the carbon fiber rudder hinge. You can see no carbon anymore and it just looks like a blob, a bump with a hole in it that's strong enough to hold all the forces that come on this rudder. And after painting it all twice I can take the tape away. And the top piece of tape was actually for nothing. The grey color is close enough. But it actually gave us a very good look of the lines that the boat will get if we paint this hull in 2 different colors. And that's how another day ends according to schedule. Now the next day is gonna be an exciting day. We have to figure out how far the boat is laying forward backwards to cut the fairing block of our 3D fish finder in the perfect angle to end up horizontal underneath our boat. And since we don't have a bandsaw, we only a circular saw table, which is already unique to have that with you on the boats, especially a good one like this. We need to cut blocks in the right angle, on which we then later can screw the plastic fairing block and cut it in that angle that we're now making. And saws can be very dangerous, but saws can also do tricky things like this. And after cutting 3 pieces, I screw the fairing block on top of there and push it over the saw table, slowly making the saw go higher and higher. And this is exactly why I cannot have a cover over the top of the saw, because then you cannot do this. Then you have to cut it in one time and that would not work with this plastic. I have to do it very gently. And when I'm taking this fairing block off the piece of wood, I think you realized how misty it was. If we would have tried to paint today, that would never work. And that's another thing that comes the whole time in the planning. What can we do now and what can we do when the weather is better, or the other way around? Now I cut this fairing block from 2 sides very gently. I just have to cut the middle with a Stanley knife and I'm very happy with the result. And with a sharp Stanley knife I can take away the little bit of melted pieces of plastic on the side and we end up with a very nice fairing block. One piece goes on the inside of the hull and one goes on the outside of the hull be in between here. And then comes the scariest part of jobs on the sandbank, drilling a hole underneath the boat, for which I first need to dig a hole in the sand to get that far underneath. And I have to drill a hole knowing that I can get this fairing block and 3D fish finder in place before the water comes back up. And the low tides are now actually when it's getting dark, and that's why I'm using a head torch to get this 3D fish finder underneath. Now getting Sikaflex away nicely, scrape away what you can, wipe the rest and then give it a quick wipe with some thinner and you end up with a very nice looking line in your Sikaflex. It works very well for me. If you have better ways of doing it, then please let me know in the comments. After it's all underneath the next day, underneath the boat again, and putting a bit of eco-friendly anti-fouling on it, since I cannot scrape this bottom very easy without destroying the fish finder. Obviously we want a fish finder to catch fish, but this fish finder can also draw a chart of the bottom of the sea, and that could be very handy in places where we want to go to, where there are not such good charts available. This could be to dock the boat, to not get your anchor stuck, or other situations, as we will see in future episodes. And the leftover anti-fouling, I'm trying something out, putting this on a propeller. Probably it works, because if it works on the anodes, why would it not work there? And then we make 2 more holes in the boat, one for the water maker and one for our navigation instrument, the log. And that's another job behind me. Now it's time to reinforce the inside of the extension, because after taking away the old parts of the transom and the Kevlar connections, we had to make new connections. I did show you in the previous episode the picture of it all being done, but what I did not show you was a couple of tricks that I think are very nice to see. Obvious, putting glass fiber over here is very easy if you can fly or have a drone to hang on, or make a whole situation to lift yourself up off the floor. That's not gonna work. So what we did was we made boards and put screws in it, and that's actually quite handy, because those screws will grab in the hardened laminate underneath and will not slide and pull your fresh laminate away. That's the way you can actually work yourself slowly through a big hole. I remember often the times in factories I worked, how we had to come up with solutions to do jobs which designers very easily say, put this laminate over here, put that over there, and they actually have no idea how in practice you're gonna do this unless you can fly, hover, and gravity doesn't exist. But it works out like this quite well, and actually this is quite an easy situation, because I could have crawled in from the other side, or you do it with 2 people. But if you are alone, a little board to sit on with 4 screws does a great job to laminate on something you have to sit in as well. And with these layers of fiber already on here, I know the joint between the old and the new part is very solid. Good enough to go sailing for now, and getting even stronger in the future when we build a water tank over here and the new bulkhead to separate this area in an aft cabin and a storage locker. And that's how the last job on the sandbank ended. Now we can get off the sandbank, and we have to, because there will not be another high tide. So when I'm making this anti-slip patterns on the aft deck so we don't skid away, we're already floating again. And making anti-slip is just, in my opinion, not that hard if you make nice shapes first. With paper tape, draw lines on it, and then with holding a Stanley knife in a very long way so you don't go left and right too easy, you get nice tight lines, taking the excess paper tape away. The corners, just put a bit of tape on there, then a round shape, cut it round, and it all looks so much nicer. I think, at least. Painting the anti-slip, you can pour the powder over, sometimes you can put it in. If you put it in, actually the big areas are the most difficult, because you very quickly end up with the lines of your roller in your anti-slip, and that gives a nasty spoiling effect of all your hard work. And carefully taking the tape away without destroying your nice anti-slip goes a lot better before the paint is cured. And with this nice anti-slip done, it finishes off all the jobs we did on the sandbank. We did not expect that it would reach episode 50 to do it, but thank you for all your likes, your comments, your support and your subscriptions. It motivated us so much. And all the episodes of alterations to Trimaran Dawn are in the playlist in the top left. In the bottom left is a round button to subscribe to our channel if you have not already done that. And on the right hand side are sailing videos with Trimaran Twilight and Trimaran Dawn. Thank you for watching Living on the Ocean.